Hey, welcome to the Huntsville Hustle podcast brought to you by Vandy's Heating and Air, where we highlight the small businesses that are backbone of the Rocket City. And today we have Zach Taylor on the show. And I think a lot of people, they work their 9 to 5 and they dream of doing something maybe creative, something outside of the boxes they're not currently doing, but not many fall through. And that's exactly what Zach did. So he's an award-winning NASA facility manager by day, but somewhere in there he managed to write a book and complete the book, and it's now out now. So Zach, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Absolutely. Anyone that's ever attempted or finished a book knows it's a huge accomplishment. So congratulations on that, man. Getting that thing out there, getting it to the finish line. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's get right into the book. So it's called Rockstar Echoes, and it feels very different from your day job at NASA. So where'd your idea come from on this?
It actually came from a couple of different dreams that I had. I have very vivid dreams. I know a lot of people are probably like that. And I had these in like a consecutive order over a couple of days. Me and my wife, we love attending shows. We got our favorite bands that we go to, great venues, right? Obviously, the Orion's a huge one. Mars is another one. The BBC, so we go to a lot of shows. And I had this first dream where we ran into a local rock star, not a local rock star, a nationally known rock star, and she actually leaves me for this rock star. And the shocking thing about that dream was not that I was shocked that she left me. The shock was, why wouldn't she? What did I offer her that this rock star, this rich, famous, very sexy man that's highly successful, what did I offer him? Now, the second dream, I love karaoke. All right. I'm not saying I'm good at karaoke, but I do love it. I love challenging myself. My friends are kind of all the same way. That's kind of one of our things. And who hasn't had a dream about being a rock star, getting that opportunity to be on the biggest stage, right? So you're at a Foo Fighters concert or, one of your favorite bands, and you get pulled on stage and they hand you the mic and you think that maybe you're just going to sing a little bit and they step away and let you have it, right? So I had a dream where I had an opportunity to get on stage with Alice in Chains and try to be William Duvall or Lane Staley, which is really important for this book. The third dream, which was the weirdest dream, but the most striking dream, was that I had traveled back in time and I was Kurt Cobain's best friend. And what was shocking about that dream was I knew where his life was headed. And I had this opportunity to stop him and to say, if you continue down this path, this is where you end up. But I also realized that if I did that, the world would not hear his music. And if they didn't hear his music, they don't hear the four pillars of grunge, right? So, your Stone Temple Pilots, your Alice in Chains, your Soundgarden, your Pearl Jams, and then all those bands that came after that. So I had to make this conscious decision to watch my best friend fall into drug addiction and knowing that he'd end up committing suicide so that he could express his art.
You are dreaming deep, man. Here's the last dream I remembered. How lame am I compared to you? I dreamed I changed insurance companies. That's my dreams right there. Man, I prefer your dreams right there. So I'll tell you what you have that the Rockstar doesn't have. You're a Snoopy Award winner. How about that? He ain't got that, does he? I mean, astronauts aren't awarding anything. He's got that going for him.
I was very fortunate to win that back in 2015, and I say this with a little bit of hubris, but I try not to be. I've won a ton of awards. I'm actually winning the Center Director's Commendation on the 28th of this month, but I don't do that. I am very passionate, right? And I actually thought about this, and I think you might ask it, like, what do people say about you, right? So the thing that my superiors always say, my best quality is my passion for spaceflight. They also say that the thing that holds me back the most is my passion for spaceflight. And these awards have been on the back of the technicians that work for me. So yeah, I manage a fabrication facility here at NASA, and I have about 30 technicians that are machinists, production control, quality. They're the guys that build these parts. And we're the guys that they call, Artemis 2 is getting stacked. It's rolling out in 2 weeks. We've had a lot of parts break on that. It's unfortunate. But they call my shop when we're up against it. And it's those guys that build the parts. Zach doesn't build the parts. Zach leads those people. And so I'm fortunate enough to accept that. But I say that I accepted that Silver Snoopy, and I've accepted my awards on behalf of these great men and women that work for us here.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, that's a great award. Anytime an astronaut gives you something, man, you're all in, right? So that's pretty cool. The people that are actually benefiting from your work is pretty nice. So you have all these dreams. What's the process from going, all right, for these dreams? How long? What's the timeline? What happens after these dreams start?
Well, as a first-time author, I think my process was probably pretty flawed. I've learned a lot, since then. This was one that, I get 30 minutes a day riding to work, 30 minutes riding back home. I listen to a lot of music and I think about things. That's my decompression time because I have so many other hobbies, right? So I'm a softball coach at Riverside Christian Academy. I fish, bass fish very competitively. And I have some other hobbies, right? So this is my time to decompress. And the thought process for this just kept hitting me and hit me, and a lot of that's because I've read a lot of memoirs about rock and roll. So my process had been to sit down and write. And that was a flawed process. So it's changed from what it was until what it is now.
So you talked about a little bit about it, kind of your dreams and what it is. So tell us kind of what's this book about? Kind of people, they've heard the title, The Rock Store from the Dreams, and what's the book about?
So there are two protagonists here in this book, and Echoes is only the first of a series, right? So Klein Thomas is a character from Alabama. He's a cover band singer, and he gets the opportunity to become the front man for this world-renowned band who has lost their front man. But Klein has a lot of trauma in his past, and that's one of the main points that I wanted to convey through this book is this generational trauma that I think, you're in the same generation that I'm in, right? This feeling of, I was told that I could be great at anything I want to do. I was told the world's out there. I was told that there were boxes to check. And if I do that, then I find success and I find that greatness within me. And he's lived his life never having found that. And now he hasn't, right? And so that all comes at a cost. So I'm not going to spoil it, but I'm going to say that there's some major costs that he has to pay. And it's not like a lot of these other rock and roll books where it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll. It's far deeper than that. It's the commodification of the industry. It is like Kurt Cobain, Chris Cornell, Lane Staley, all these great artists from the grunge era. It is when I put my soul out there and people love it and they celebrate my pain. On the flip side, Rain Harlow is a single mother from LA, and she travels to LA at 16, and she has an all-female punk band. And they can't break out, right, because the world doesn't want them. And so this is a book about when those two things collide, and we get to have this dual protagonist set up.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to take a walk around your brain sometime. That's an interesting place.
I don't know if you like that or not. I don't know. My wife has been married to me for 20 years, and it's funny because we are literally that couple that can finish each other's sentences because we've been together longer than we haven't at this point. And she'll say the same things, and I'm like, you're already walking around in there, so what are you asking about?
That's an interesting way to look at it. It might be a little scary place. You walk around my brain, I don't think you want to be in there sometimes. Although I'm pretty boring. I told you about my insurance dream. You're engineering by day. I mean, that's another skill set entirely. What was the hardest part about stepping into that identity as an author?
I think the biggest thing for me was that I was going to cover a lot of dark corners that most books, most movies, things like that won't shine light on, right? So this book has been compared a lot to Daisy Jones and the Six. It's been compared to Almost Famous and things like that. Great work, right? But they kind of only skim addiction and grief and all these things. And when I went into this, and again, you talk about dreams about insurance, but the reality is that is, I feel like that's part of our generational struggle is how we devote so much time to things like that. So I decided that if I was going to go into this, that I was going to go in full tilt, right? I was not going to shy away from these dark corners that most people kind of look at a little bit and look away. And the problem with that is that you give a lot of insight into walking around your brain, just like you talk about. And there's a lot of fear with that, right? So, there are people that I've grown up with in the church. There are going to be softball players. And that was a fear that I definitely have, is that there's a lot of Zach's ideals that come out in this book and his feelings on life. And people are going to see a guy that is, I love life, and I think I'm a great guy, and I think people get along with me, but you're going to see that other side that maybe you're going to question things about.
That's interesting right there. And I can tell just by meeting you that if you do something, you're going all in.
I am.
Clearly, that's the way you do things. So when people sit down and finish the book, what do you hope they feel after they finish with the book?
I really hope that they feel like, so this should be at the back of their minds when finishing Echoes, because it's the first of a series, right? So there should be two ideals that I'm trying to convey that they can't quite put their finger on, but they know I'm saying something, right? And I'm pretty clear about that. The first main idea is that the book is not about Klein Thomas at all. Rockstar is a generic name, and I knew that going in, and it's done on purpose because everybody's a rock star, nobody's a rock star in these books, and they all have their stories. The two main ideals that I wanted to convey was the struggle of our generation and the world for this matter. I'm not saying that older millennials and millennials live in a world that nobody else lives in. I'm saying that our struggles are different, and the world that we've grown up with is different because all we've known since we were 18 is 9/11, Katrina, things like that, and yet we just keep on pressing on, which is something I think that you in particular can identify with. That's ideal number one. Ideal number two, and I think we're going to talk a little bit about Rain and how I came up with her, was as I created her, I think that I accidentally stumbled across a social platform. And as I was writing her and she organically grew, I realized there's not a lot of women in rock and roll, right? Going back to the 60s and 70s, you don't see more than 5 at a time and they only last a decade. And why is that? And then I started looking at it from a global perspective for women in our country, which, was something that I also feared, right? Was how would people look at me speaking on behalf of other women, on how hard it is for women in our society to succeed professionally, whether that's being a rock star, a stay-at-home mom, or somewhere in between as a professional. They're held to such an interesting and difficult level.
Yeah, so that was one of my questions. Like, who is the most difficult character to write? It seems like that would be it. Putting yourself in the mind of a single mom in LA, it's probably a little bit different from your walk of life.
Mm-hmm.
So that's cool, man. So you mentioned a little bit, you kind of talked about it a little bit. So this isn't just a standalone story. What's coming next? You got something bigger coming out from after these?
I do. Well, and what's really interesting about writing this book, we talked a little bit and touched briefly on the writing process. So I sat down and thought, I wrote one book and I left it open-ended. And I knew I'd write a second one. And I took that first book and I went to an editor and they said, this is not one book, it's 2 books. Okay, great. We wrote those 2. Mirrors, the follow-on, is actually in final editing right now. And I took the third book in the series, same deal. Hey, man, this is not one book, this is 2 books. And then, or 2 books. And then, I have an Origins book that's a prequel. And then I have at least one sequel. And then I'm planning on one standalone that takes place from the perspective of one of the big characters. And again, I think that's one of the great things that I do. I'm not claiming to be a great author, but there's a little bit of sleight of hand because all my beta readers and things, they would talk about the characters that they loved, and I wished I would have seen more of them. And I took that to heart and said, well, what if I took like the least important character in all of these 3 books or 4 books, and I gave her her own book? So we have a whole universe planned.
Very cool, man. You're going to be busy for years to come. I like it.
I hope so.
People get kind of weird when they find out, oh, you're writing a book. What were your family, your coworkers, your friends? How did they react when they found out, hey, you're writing a book?
I don't think anybody was surprised because, you kind of touched on it. You kind of nailed me. I always have to stay busy doing something, and I do go full tilt into any hobby that I'm associated with. So growing up, it was 2 things. It was music and sports, and I had to choose one, so I chose sports. When I was in college, it wasn't college, I can tell you that, at least not at first, because I make the joke that I think I'm probably the worst engineer that NASA's ever had because I've not used engineering a day in my life. Whether it was building cars, racing cars, and then it became tournament bass fishing, and then it became restoring classic arcade games, and then it became coaching or whatever, I dive right into it. So, that's kind of the way that I am, just kind of in life, and writing was no different. So all of my friends and family said at first, oh, this is just the latest thing that he's going to dive into. He's going to kind of master it and then he's going to move on. But kind of like what the Rockstar series is so few people in life find that thing that they truly believe they're great at, right? The rest of us kind of stumble along and we're good at maybe a lot of things are good at one thing. We're never great. And I kind of felt like maybe I finally found that, right? This is something that I do that makes me happy, that I think that I can express myself. So, I definitely have gone all in on it.
I love it, man. So many people need that creative outlet, especially if you have that, everyone gets whether they love their job or not, it can kind of become a grind. So you have something to look forward to, even on the ride home. You're talking about like a 30-minute commute. Most people are going to be like, but you're looking forward to it, right? You're in there planning out your universe and things like that, using your time wisely. I love it. So I think people need to see it level up like that. So speaking of leveling up, we're going to do the rapid fire section. Are you prepared for this? All right. So I'm going to keep people get to know you a little bit better on here. So when you are writing, do you have music or are you in total silence?
Music is an absolute must.
And I should have known that one by the quality of this book, what it's all about. I should have known that one. So what's your favorite place in Huntsville to kind of clear your head?
I'm going to go down to Ditto Landing. I'm going to get in a boat and I'm going to go fishing.
Yeah, man. I probably could have answered these myself. Just talking to you right here. When you are reading yourself, do you prefer a paperback, hardcover, or audiobook?
Absolutely paperback.
Yeah, I don't know why, but folding a paperback just feels good, right? Just folding it over.
It's in your hands. It's there. You can touch it.
Yeah, I'm a fan. So, what's one word your coworkers use to describe you?
Passionate.
Yeah. And how about your family?
Passionate and intense.
Intense. Yeah, those two usually go hand in hand. I get that. So, if Rockstar Echoes was a movie, who's the starring cast of this thing?
Okay, so I've thought about this a lot, right? And I've got my little cheat sheet over here, right? So Ben Foster is Klein, and for those that don't know him, he was in 3:10 to Yuma, so that's a Western film. But he also was in this movie called Pandorum, which is a science fiction film, and I love both of those genres. And I know it's a short answer. I got you on that one.
Keep going. No, you're
His
doing good. I like you to
seriousness,
take it serious.
his seriousness and ability to convey such an intensity is so important, and that's Klein Thomas. And then for Rain, I've got a couple. I would love Taylor Momsen, and for those that don't know her, she started off as Cindy Lou Who in The Grinch, and now she is in the Pretty Reckless, a band. They've been in Huntsville several times. That's my dream person. I don't know if we get her back into acting. So my backup plans there are, I'm looking at Maya Hawke or Anya Taylor-Joy.
Good selection right there. I like how you really thought this out. That's good work.
I have a whole cast list, buddy, for everybody.
Like just meeting you, that is not a surprise. Okay, that is not a surprise. That seems like exactly what you would do. So with these, do you have them for the future books as well?
I do.
And how about there plans for audiobook to go along with these the written book?
It's something that we're going to work on. I kind of talked about this with you earlier before the show started off. I went into this like everything else and said, I'm not going to leave things to chance. If things are going to fail, it's going to be my writing. It's not going to be something that I could have controlled and didn't. So, I hired a professional artist, a professional designer, and those absolutely jump off the page when you pick up Echoes. And the problem with that is, and I even hired a publicist to help me out, that is it comes with a significant sticker shock. So I'm going to continue writing no matter what. In terms of future work, Mirrors is definitely already proceeding. But at some point, you've got to step back and say, what is my level of intent here? Is this, and I don't really care about making money, but at the same time, we're talking a significant investment. So I've got to consider that.
Yeah, I get it. Hey, man, you don't want to go poor writing your hobbies, right?
Nope.
So if someone's listening right now and they have a creative idea, but they keep putting it off, what would you say to that person?
I would say kind of the same way that, I did this, right? So engineering is such an interesting thing because it's so linear, right? There are iterations where you go back a little bit. Creativity is something that seems frightening because you're in a dark room and there's probably this pit out there and there's edges of the room and you're never going to find them if you don't start walking. So start walking and find those edges and find that cliff. Even a cliff can be great. It can serve a purpose. So for me, it's you have to just sit down and make yourself do it.
Key to anything. I mean, they talk about Stephen Pressfield. He's an author. He talks about the muse, right? And the muse only shows up when you sit down and grind it out. It's not just going to magically appear. You got to sit down, put in the work. It's weird. It's like anything else. You got to put in the work. It's not magic.
It is.
That's
for sure.
it. And you've clearly done that. I mean, the mental and the physical skills, sitting down, writing. It's a process, man. So kudos to you. If you've never written a book, it's a painful but rewarding process. So
it is.
Just get started was the best thing you can tell somebody right there. So I know people are like, hey, you keep talking about this book. How can I find this book? How can I support this local author? How can they find it?
So we actually have an event coming up Friday the 9th at Snell on the Wall from 4:30 to 5:30 where you can come by and pick up his book, and I'm happy to sign it and talk with anybody. You can find it on Kindle Unlimited. You can find it on Amazon, and hopefully, let's cross our fingers here, you're going to be able to find it at any of your local bookstores. It is available on B&N and the big chains too for order. You're not going to be able to go in there and find them. If you can't find it at your local bookstore, please go in and request it.
There you go. Hey, let's make this happen. That's our request this week. If you're listening right now, request this book. You want to support local authors, guys in your community. You can see him out riding around, catching fish, doing all the kind of coaching softball. You want to support that guy, not some nameless guy. Plus, we want to see the rest of these books get out there as well. So we got to get him some funds. That's
we
right.
absolutely do.
Hey. Yeah.
And I'll give you a little bit of a teaser, right? We want to see these books come out for Huntsville, right? Because all of our local venues, right? So we can't shove them all into one book, but my plan is to get so many of our iconic venues into these books, right? So make sure that you support them so that we can see places like Humphrey's Bar and Grill. We get to see, places like Mars. We get to see Orion, the VBC. We get to talk about local history like the Quick Airplane Space and Rocket Center. So keep it going so we can make sure that Huntsville stays on the map.
There you go. That's it. That's what the show is all about. Supporting everybody in Huntsville and making Huntsville the greatest place in the world. That's what we're doing. Appreciate you coming on here and tell us about your book. I'm very excited. I'm excited for you and excited for the rest of us to be able to read it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. And we'll link all that stuff in show notes. You can go click on there and go check those things out, the social media, all that good stuff. And keep supporting local. Keep supporting our local businesses. Zach, appreciate you and everyone supporting them. We'll see you guys next week on the Huntsville Hustle podcast.
Appreciate it.